Okay, so this this sikha it's not like your regular likud. It's also a keta of a farbrengen, a mugedike piece of a farbrengen from Shabbos Parshas Shemos. Yud Tes Tevis Tavshem Emches. Tonight is Chav Tevis. Chav Tevis, as we know, is the Yahrtzeit of the Rambam. Being that it's the Yahrtzeit of the Rambam, the Rebbe very often in the later years spoke, especially after the Rebbe started Mitzvah Rambam, he spoke about the Rambam a lot in connection with his Yahrtzeit. And there are certain farbrengens and sichos, both in Lakuta sichos and in farbrengens, where the Rebbe connects and it shows certain things that the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe both had in common. In general, they're both dealt both with Nigla the Torah and Pnimius HaTorah. In other words, they dealt with Inyanim having to do with Halacha. The Alter Rebbe wrote Halacha Sefer, Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam compiled Halachos. The Alter Rebbe was someone that dealt with people that needed to have inspiration in their Avodas Hashem. And the Rambam also had Moira Nevuchim, guided those that had troubles in Avodas Hashem, and so on and so forth. The Rebbe brings also in more details in the style of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. He compares it to the style of the Rambam, and also the idea of the beginning of the Rambam talks about Inyanim having to do with Pnimius, with Inyanim of like Inyanim of Alakus, and belief in the Eibishter, and so on, which is what Tanya is about. So in a similar vein, the Rebbe is going to talk about this as well over here, a certain common thread between the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam, and he's also going to connect it with Parshas Shemos. Even though, interestingly, most of the time, the Alter Rebbe's Yahrtzeit comes out in the week of Parshas Ve'era, like this year, and also very often the Rambam's Yahrtzeit is also done. So Chav and Chav Daled Tevis come out in the week of Parshas Ve'era. In this week, the Chav is in Shemos, and Va'era is the Alter Rebbe, but still no, in that year, even though it was Parshas Va'era, but the Rebbe connects it with Parshas Shemos. So he says, Mishabes Sheminei Mizbarch Kula Yaimin. You could use your phones, by the way. From this Shabbos, and again, the style of the Farbrengen is a little bit different than Lakutei Sicha style. That this Shabbos, that from it, all the days of the week receive their bracha. Mizbarchim gamu bi'ikar hayomim yuchadim yemeis Geulah shebeshavua haba Chav Tevis Yom Hilula da Rambam. The Shabbos was Yutes Tevis. So that means that very night, the Rebbe is going to point out, was already beginning the Yahrtzeit of the Rambam, the Chav Daled Tevis, as Yom Hilula da Admur HaZaken. This year, Chav Daled Tevis is going to be on this upcoming Wednesday. Tuesday night, Wednesday day. So he says in the famous Igeres HaKodesh in the back of Tanya, Kol Maisa v'Toirose v'Avedose Asher Ovad Kol Yemei Chayav Mizgalo Meir B'chinas Gilui Melmailo Lamata. And not only does it shine down here, but it actually has an effect in the world. Upoil Yeshuis B'Kerev Ha'aretz, the Rebbe often speaks about it, how it actually comes down and affects the physical world. Usually you think about a Yahrtzeit like a Yistalkus. Yistalkus means leaving, that it's nostalgic, that the neshama goes up. But instead, the Alter Rebbe says it's not in a way of leaving or going away, but it's poil Yeshuis B'Kerev Ha'aretz, yater b'chayoy, like the Alter Rebbe says, and so on. It's not just that the first time when the Alter Rebbe passed away, the Rambam passed away, so that's when you had the Gilui of all of his Avodah, but every single year on the Yahrtzeit this happens. So it's not that Chav Tevis this year is less than the Chav Tevis that happened the first time around, just the opposite. Every year goes up Mailim B'Kodesh, so therefore it's even a stronger Gilui of the Rambam, this Chav Tevis, than the last hundreds of years. which again, this is not negate to us because we're right talking about the last Shabbos. The Rebbe says that the Shabbos has even greater power if it gives a bracha to something, just like a tzaddik gives a bracha. Why did I go to tzaddik to get a bracha? Because the tzaddik is greater, so therefore I get a bracha from him. So if you say Shabbos comes down the brachas for everything in the rest of the week, so that means there is an inyan in Shabbos that's even greater than the day of Chavdal Tevis that's going to come out afterwards.
It's from Wednesday to Tuesday. Wednesday before until Tuesday after for Havdalah. That's what Shabbos is.
There is that inyan,
right?
But here what the Rebbe is talking about is my name is Baruch Kol Yomer, that from Shabbos, the rest of the week, including the Rebbe even says the next Shabbos as well. And we see that from Shabbos and Varch MaChodesh. If Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbos, when do you bench that Rosh Chodesh? You bench it the Shabbos before. So the Rebbe brings the raya from that, from the fact that you bench the next Shabbos from the previous Shabbos. That means Shabbos, my name is Baruch and Kula Yomer, even the coming Shabbos as well. So it says, Kol Yanam Morois Harem Bashgacha Pratis. Then move on. Aleph. Hakvias the Shnei Yemei Heilula B'Shanazu Ba'oisa Shavua Va'Brocha the Shnei Ma'oisa Shabbos Hareze Mitzadan Nekudam Shetefes Shebeneim. Ukimduber Pam Ba'Arucha B'Negel L'Shayches HaMiyuchedes Ben Rambam V'Admor HaZokin. And there's a few places in Lekut Sichos where the Rebbe speaks about it. There's a Sichos Chelik Chavav, there's a Sichos Chelik Lamed Vav, there's other places where the Rebbe speaks about it. Ulahaisif, Shebeshana Zu, Mudgeshes Uboilet Hashayches Yoiser, Ki Aleph, Al Pi Ashgacha Protis, Nikva Asiyim de Machzer HaRevi Balimud HaRambam, Lefi HaChalukah Degim Proken B'Yoim, Limud HaHilach Mispashet B'chol Tfutzis Yisrael V'min Yisrael Toiru L'Yoim Chavdal Tevis Yoim Halul D'Admor HaZokin. So we see a connection between the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe, that we make the siyum on the Rambam in the day of the Yahrtzeit of the Alter Rebbe. Beis Haistalkas D'Admor HaZokin Hoysam Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh et Shmois. Like he says in footnote 4, that Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Shmois, which was that Shabbos in that year, was Chav Gimel, and Motzei Shabbos was Chav Dalet. Shebeshana zu chal b'yom ha'istalkas da Rambam. So the fact that Alter Rebbe was nostalgic on Motzei Shabbos, and the year that the Rebbe said the Sikha, Motzei Shabbos was the nostalgic of the Rambam, is another connection. Beis HaShabbos shememenu mizborchin yimei ha'ilula hanal hu Shabbos Parshas Shmois ובפרט על פי האירוס בעל ההילולה שצורך ליחס עם הזמן עם פרס השבוע מכיוון שהתויכן דמייסה ותרוסה ועבודות דרמב"ם והאדמו"ר הזקן מרומזים בפרשת שמות, as the Sikh is going to go on to explain, as the Fabring is going to go on to explain. And the Rebbe also brings, that's why the Tzemach Tzedek, when he wrote down when the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, he says Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Shmois. You could have connected it with Parshas Vayera. It's already the week of Parshas Vayera. Why does he say Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Shmois? Because the Alter Rebbe still has a connection with Parshas Shmois as well. So the Alter Rebbe has a connection with Parshas Shmois. The Rambam has a connection with Parshas Shmois. As first he's going to explain the idea of Shmois, and then he's going to go into what their connections. The Yuvim Bagdamas Habir B'Toichem V'Chidush the Parshas Shmois, which is the Parsha, which is Hascholas HaGeulah Mitzrayim. The Parsha is HaKoidmas, the Sefer Bereishis Medubar Oidis Yeridus Yosef. And then V'achar Kach Yaakov V'Bonov into Mitzrayim, L'Gols Mitzrayim. V'agam Shu Parshas Elu Nemra Hav Toche V'Lekim Poked Yivked Eschem V'Hel Eschem in Aretz HaZois. So there's already a promise for the Geulah. So it's not just the Yerida Legolus, there's also the Havtach on the Geulah. V'gam lifnei zelefnei Yerida, before, when Yaakov Avinu didn't know what he should do, Hivtiach HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'anoichi al chagam olei. So we already find in Chumash Bereishis things that are connected with the Geulah. We don't have to wait till Chumash Shmois for that. Harei zagrak Havtach she'achar kach tia Geulah. Avla matzav shebahoyve b'poil boy meduber b'parshas achronis the Sefer Bereshis. What's the topic about? Golus. Hareo ha'yirida l'Mitzrayim. Mashenkim b'parshas Shemos. Av Shabbos cholos ha'parsh. Mesuper oidus ha'golus v'kushi ha'golus v'ayvid Mitzrayim b'nei Yisrael b'forach v'yimarus chayehem. So it's also talking about golus. Mikol makom miyad la'achreze mesuparim inyanim shem kshurim la'ascholos ha'geulah. There's latest Moshe Rabbeinu Mashiach v'Geulah Yisrael Tziva Ashlichus Makadosh Baruch Hu that Eibusha told Moshe Rabbeinu Lohitzis b'nei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. And not just that he told him, but also how he already began to fulfill the shlichus. V'gam ascholos kiyam hashlichus. Dibur Moshe v'Aaron leparoi. Koyam Hashem Elokei Yisrael. Shlachas Ami. All of these things that are already the beginning of the Geulah from Mitzrayim. All of this is already in this parsha. The Rebbe says also in Ha'ara that really even one of the gzeiros has to do with the Geulah as well. Why did Pari make a gzeira v'im ben hu v'amita noisai? Why do you want to throw all the boys to drown them? Why do you want to kill them? Because he was scared of Moshe Rabbeinu, because he knew that was going to be Noel Mashiach Yisrael. So even in the parts where it's talking about the Tzaras HaShibud, it's already referring to Inyanim of Gedegul. Oizdal. V'hine mekivin sha'atoich the kol parsha merumas b'shmam, and the Rebbe always emphasizes this idea that we find the importance of the name of the parsha. V'haraya, Parshas Noach is not called Toldos, even though it says Elo Toldos Noach. Seemingly, if we're going according to the first word in the parsha, or the earliest word in the parsha that's unique, you're not going to say Vaidaber should be the name of the parsha, or Va'ela should be the words of the parsha, but the first unique word in Parshas Noach is Toldos. It's not called Toldos, it's called Noach. Only when it talks about Parshas Toldos does it call it Toldos. Why? So that's a proof that the name of the Parsha is specifically chosen, even though it's at the beginning of the Parsha, of course, but it's specifically chosen because it has a shachs with the Parsha. So the same thing, Parshas Shemos has to do with the Teuchen that we're about to talk about now. Harimuvan she'inyan ha'geul ha'teuchen da Parsha merumes b'shem ha'Parsha Shemos. Ulahoisif sha'amr le'el she'Shemos merames le'geula while derech ha'kosav v'medrash b'ascholos ha'Parsha ve'ele Shemos b'nei Yisrael al shem geulas Yisrael niskuru kan. The Medrash has a problem here at the beginning of our Parsha, that all the Mefarsha and Mikra have the problem. Already in last Chumash, he already said, who were the Bnei Yisrael that went down to Mitzrayim? Why does he say again, Ve'ele Shmois Bnei Yisrael haboy Mitzrayim? That already took place in earlier. Why does he talk about it now? So the Medrash says, you know why he talks about it now? Because he wants to connect them with the Geulah. So we see right away the idea of Shemos, the Shemus, the names, has to do already with the Inyan of Geulah. But Tzarech Lahavin, Inyan Hashem, Hareu L'chura, Rak Inyan Chitzayni, She'ein HaMoira Begilui, Al Tchunas HaAdam HaNikr B'Shem Zeh. And the Rebbe says a very practical thing, Kvi Sheroyim, Sheyesh Nam Libui Anashim, Achalukim B'Tchunaseim, Seichel Midas V'Chulu, You'll have a lot of people that are called Chaim that are completely and totally different from each other. Why? Because we're Pashtus. The name Chaim doesn't really have to do with who the person is, seemingly. V'im kain, ma'hu Geulah ilu the Shemos va'ad shezeh merames ala Geulah. Seemingly, Shemos is only an external thing. By the way, al pi Chassidus, we also know that when we talk about a name, we talk about Hashem, so we say that the whole world was Nesava from Hashem's name. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchus Elolim Vod. That through the Eibishter's name, that's how the world was Nesava. And what's the Nekud of saying that the Eibishter's name was Nesava from the Eibishter was Mahava the world through Hashem? Because it shows it's a Davar Chitzayni. That the Chayis of the Eibishter that was involved in the Hisavas Oilmas is only as far as my name is from me. I can exist. If I'm all alone without anybody, I can exist without a name, seemingly. So Shem is a davar chitzoni. So why, when we're talking about the Geulah, and we're talking about a parsha that is maramas on the Geulah, do we use seemingly something so insignificant like Hashem?
Yeah, but you also bring out a name when you faint, you call your name. It's deep of you. It's both ways it goes.
We will talk about it. And first of all, he says about Begolui. That's what he says over here concerning what's Begolui. And then we'll see about the chayes that you were talking about. Hey, va'bir bezeh, sha'ad rabbi. He understands. Ze gufa sha'Hashem eine moire begilui ala koiches v'tchunas pratis shel ha'adam. Hanikra b'shem zeh. It's not because how little value the name has, but just the opposite. Harei ze beglal sha'Hashem kosher la'adam atzmai. Etzem ha'adam. Shalamayla mikoiches pratim. And when we talk about the koiches pratim, I might have less seichel than someone else. I might have stronger midas than someone else. I might have better or worse midas than someone else. My chush hadibur might be different than someone else. But these are all chitzonistic things. In etzem, there is no chilukim between the Yidden, and that's expressed in the idea of Hashem. Okay, move on gamazeh. Where do we see the connection of the Shem with the essence of the person? Shekishakoyrim la'adam b'shmoi, gam kishu asuk b'yoyser, poinahu b'chol atzmusay la'koyroyser b'shmoi. Ki ayde akriya b'shmoi koyrim u'megalim lo'irak kechoytz v'apratim, ki imhu atzmai etzem ha'adam. It pulls out the person himself, and like you brought now the marshal, he's going to bring it now, v'yiseirim ezeh, gam kishu b'matzav shel alfas rachman l'tzlan, she'oz kol kechoytz v'apratim, v'gam achayes hanimshch beguf, hem b'matzav shel is almas. Hari achas hasgulos la'oireroi, yayde akriya b'shmoi, ki ayde ze koyrim u'ma'oirerim etzem hanefesh. And he brings a famous word that that's why the Baal Shem Tov came down into this world, because his name was Yisrael, because Yidden, the state and situation, the way Yidden were in that time, after the Gzeirus of Tach V'Tat, so the Yidden was in a matzav of his alphus, they were in a state of a spiritual unconsciousness, a spiritual coma, and by sending down Yisrael, Baal Shem Tov, Yisrael is the name of Klal Yisrael, it was to be ma'oider, the etzem of the Eden, to bring him down from a state of his alphas.
Just to go off topic, but if that's the case, then maybe everyone can have the same name.
Oh, so I was thinking about that also, that if so, everybody should have the same name. Lepoyel aber, it's the name of the parsha is just Shemos, or Shemos, not Shemos, but Shemos. In other words, there is, of course, Lepoil, when we call the person's name, it draws down into the body a neshama that has certain tchunas that make one different from another. So maybe the difference over here is the concept of the Shem itself, and then there's the Shem Prati. So the name of the parsha is not Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. The name of the parsha is Shmois, the idea of a name. Just the idea of a name shows on the connection of the etzem, because every yid mitzad etzem atzmusay is really the same thing, and that's expressed by the idea of a name.
Every name has the same, like will do the same thing to each person.
Correct, because the name's connection to the person is the same by everyone. Maybe, but it was going through my mind what you were saying. Al pizeh tuven hashayches the shmois legeulah bisman hagolus. What happens to this person beruchnius then? Koiches haneshama him b'matzav shalis almas. V'ozei nasaga mitis belakuz v'chaser ba mitis inyan da'avas Hashem v'yiras Hashem v'yoytz b'zeh v'ad shalafamim ha'is almas shemitzad hagolus hi kol kach shebegilui ein royim chiluk ben Yehudi le'eini Yehudi lahavdil. Shenimtza atzlei begolos, that is by golos by the goy. Ukefi shaya begolos Mitzrayim. Shebechitzoynis ubegilui haya b'nei Yisrael bekama inyanim k'ma Mitzrayim lahavdil. Va'ad, until the malachim over there were being makatrig, that when Hashem was punishing the Mitzrayim, they were saying, Sha'Allah lo'av David Zara, va'Allah lo'av David Zara. Which means bechitzoynis, there was nothing nicker between them. But there was something else. Aval gam b'mayim the matzav the helam v'hester agolas Harei ha'etzem, the Yehudi, nekudas ha'yadus, nishar b'shleimus. V'idei zeh shloi shinu shmam, like it says, the three inyanim, that the Yidden, because of that, the Rebbe actually brings down different nuschos, 3 inyanim, 4 inyanim, 5 inyanim, that Yidden did not change, but one thing the Rebbe always brings down, shloi shinu shmam, they did not change their names. And by the way, this is another medrash that says, he brings it down in the previous ha'orah, that it says, why does it say, ve'elu shmois b'nei Yisrael haboy Mitzrayim here again? To say, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Nachsen, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Salkin. Meaning, the same names that they went into Golus with, the same names they came out of Golus with. That was the point of saying, Eila Shmois B'nei Yisrael Haboy Mitzrayim, even though now we're not talking about coming to Mitzrayim. Here we're talking about the time before the Geulah. We're not talking about the time of coming to Mitzrayim. That was in the last Chumash. But he's trying to tell you this message, that Shloishinu Shemam. Shenikroim b'shmoiseim ha-Yehudim ha-Amitim, Shmois b'nei Yisrael. And through that, ma'oirerim ha'etzem shal Yehudi ha-kosher im ha'etzem shal Kodesh Baruch Hu kiviyachol, v'ideize memarim mevim as ha-Geulah, like it says, because lo yishinu shemam, that is the reason why the Geulah came. U'be'omek yoser. So now the Rebbe is going to say, it's not just that the names of the Yidden that have to do with the etzem prevented the Golus from completely swallowing them up, that allowed them that even when they were in Golus, they should have to do with the etzem because all the other koiches were concealed. But Adrab, being in Golus, is what brought them to a deeper level. U'ba'omek yoser, shaydei ha-Golus gufe boim la'achar ha-Geulah, la'aliyah nailus yoser mishahoya lifnei ha-Golus. V'gam inyan zeh yuven al pi ha-moshel de la'el de yisoyrus ha'adam misalfusay de kriya b'shmai. Kishmedabrim lemishu bezman shekol kechoysav seichol, midas, rotzen v'tainuk heim begaluyim royim miyad inyan of apratim. You see, oh, this guy's a smart guy, or this guy's a nice guy, or I could ask him for a favor. You see different chunas of his nefesh. You're not connecting with a person's etzem. You're more connecting with what the different inyanim is. You're connecting with his seichel, you're connecting with his midah, you're connecting with his tainuk. You're seeing what type of person he is, not the essence. U'b'meila harei ze mailim sheyurgesh ha'etzem. When there is inyanim that are, when we're dealing, according to Chassidus terminology, with giluyim, giluyim covers over that we're not sure, we don't know what's going on with the etzem. And the Rebbe says in the footnote that also the person that you're speaking to, what's he connecting to you with? He's connecting to you with his seichel, with his midas. He's not bringing his etzem into the picture over here because that's not necessary now. Literally, when you're trying to wake a guy up and you're calling him by his name, you're not trying to connect with his seichel, not with his midas, not with his koyach hatainuk, not with his koyach hamachshava. You're trying to shake him out from his very essence. In other words, when the koyches hagiluyim of the Yidden were revealed, like we said before, they had ava, they had yira, they had appreciation of Elokus. Valderech ze bezman shelofnei yiridah legols Mitzrayim. Mikiven she'oz hoyu hakoyches hapratim daneshama begilui hasaga belokus ava v'yira v'cholu hoysa avodas Hashem al pitam vadas. They use their mind. Their ava, their yira came because of their recognition in the Eibishter and so on. U'b'meila lo yizbate hakesher ha'atzmin sheben Yehudi la'Kodesh Baruch Hu haba mitzad etzem haneshama. You'll say, you know why this person is Jewish? You know why he's connected with the Eibishter? Because his mind is thinking about the Eibishter. Because he's doing mitzvahs. Because he loves the Eibishter. You don't see that the connection is because of the essence. We did not see any miracles. We did not see any signs. We don't know anything on godliness. We don't know anything in Elokus. Harikol inyan ba'avodas Hashem she'oisim oz. Davke in the time of Golus. Davke when we're so low and we don't feel Holocaust at all. As gam dvarim ktanim k'moy lo shinu eshmam ki. A person could say, what's going on over here? They said, halal lo'ev d'avodah zarah, halal lo'ev d'avodah zarah. What significance, what importance does it have, lo shinu eshmam? They're right there by the Torah. What do I care about Lo Shinu Shmam? In the language of, some other communities, as the Chagoy Gomer, as the Machal Shabbos, Why do we get so excited about Lo Shinu Shmam? Mevatim hakesher ha'atzmi sheben Yehudi la'Kadosh Baruch Hu haba mitzad etzem haneshama. The very fact that the person, especially in that darkness, shows that he has a connection, even with a little thing, that's a proof that it's not because of the seichel, it's not because of the midah, it's not because of his tainuk, it's because of an essential connection. The Rosh in Los Angeles used to say that these days, you see it a lot of times when you have someone that's not from, and one of the biggest insults for them is if you say, or if they think you're trying to imply that they're not Jewish. If they think that you're trying to say they're not Jewish, what's going to say on it? What does it make a difference? He doesn't keep Shabbos, he doesn't eat kosher, he doesn't put on mezuzah, he doesn't think that any part of Torah mitzvahs is binding, but as soon as you tell, he thinks that you're saying that he's not Jewish, boom. He blows up. Because he's touching the etzem. ולכן בזמן הגאולה שעוז תסגל העצם הנשמה שבו לידי ביטוי בעבודה שבזמן הגולוס יסעלו ישרול למדרגה ניילס יויסר מכפי שהיו לפני הירידה לגולוס. This golus itself brings us that once the Geulah comes, we're going to see that essence come out. We're going to see the etzem kesher between a Yid and the Eibishter. זהו גם אחד הביורים בזה, שדווקא לאחרי ההקדמה דגולת מצרים ויציאת מצרים, זכו ישראל למתן תורה ביציאתו העם מצרים, תבנס הלקים על ההר הזה. הגם שעצם העניין דלימוד התורה, גם לפני זה אצל אבוס. It's brought down that what's one of the reasons for the Golus, Mitzrayim, the reason why it had to be Golus Mitzrayim was to make the Yidden Roy to be able to be Mekabel Torah. And the Rebbe also brings down that just like then it was to be able to be Mekabel Torah, the same thing Golus Achrin, which is very long and terrible and difficult, is to be able to receive the Giluyim and the Torah of the time of Mashiach. So the question is, Torah was always there. Torah was there in the Zman of the Abbas. It was Yaakov Holch Lahoris Lefan of Goyshna. Yosef, it says, learned Torah in Mitzrayim. Yaakov even brought Yehuda to establish a yeshiva. The Rebbe explains that why do you have to bring Yehuda if Yosef already had a yeshiva? Because he wanted someone that's dedicated to Torah, not someone that's involved in politics, and he also learns Torah. The Rebbe speaks about that. So he had to have Yehuda. So we had the ultimate commitment to Torah. We had it all before Matan Torah. So why is the Yitzias Mitzrayim Agdama to Matan Torah?
Yeah, Avram with Pesach.
Avram
with Matan.
Yeah. Hagam she'etzmin delimrat Torah, Gam lifnei zetzel avos. So shnei inyanim hanal sheyeshnam etzel Yisrael, Aleph koichet apratim, seichol, chulu, etc. What's called the Giluyim. Beis etzem haneshama, yesh dugmasam gam b'Torah. Aleph, there's chachmas ha-Torah, shish chachmasish al-Kadosh Baruch Hu. The seichel of Torah, what's called Giluyim. The base, and the second thing is etzem ha-Torah, k'fi shekshurei matzmusish al-Kadosh Baruch Hu, masha ha-Torah hi shmoisav shal ha-Kadosh Baruch Hu v'al b'chinas shmoi ha-Gadol. Every single word in Torah is another Shem of the Eibishter. And not just any Shem, but even Shem, Shmoi ha-Gadol. So, this the Rebbe a lot of times says, this is the reason that the Friedrich Rebbe was very much makbid, that when they teach children Aleph Beis, we've spoken about this before, you teach them separate from the Nekudas. Because if you're teaching it along with the Nekudas, like in modern Hebrew type of teaching, so then that means the only idea behind the Aleph Beis is the Havana, is the pronunciation. There's no Kedusha in the Oisis Mitzad Atzmam. teaching the Nekudas and the Aleph base separate means the Aleph has a Kedusha even when it doesn't make any sense. It has no Havana to it. There's no pronunciation to it. And the Kamatz has a Kedusha in it even when it's not connected to a letter. Because there's the Kedusha of the Torah that's higher, and the essence of the Torah that's higher than the Chachma of the Torah. V'lachem, lifnei gols Mitzrayim she'ozeh iru rak hoichas haneshama seichel chulum gam ha-Torah shalom du oz hoisera kefi shi chachmasu shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a very interesting insight. I don't remember if other places the Rebbe emphasizes this. By the Agdama, the Geulah Mitzrayim, Yahrtzeit Mitzrayim, she'oz nizgala etzam haneshama Davke oz kiblu etzem ha-Torah b'matan Torah. So, and that's why you need to have matan Torah. That's why it wasn't enough just, well, they learned from Avram, and Yeshiva Shem Va'ever, and they learned from Yehuda, and they learned from Yaakov, and they learned from Yosef, because the only thing that could be given over from the others was only the Havana V'asag in the Torah, the Giluyim of the Torah. The etzem ha-Torah, that you needed to have the process of matan Torah. And for that process to take place, you have to have also the gilui of the etzem haneshama that happens during the Geulah of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Now we're going to get to the Rambam and also to the Alter Rebbe. I'll pick all now, Tuvan Gama Shaykhs, that Rambam, the Parshas Shemos, my name is Baruch Yem Elul Shaloiva, Gama Yem Sheba Yisayim Be'ez Hashem, Limut Sifrei Ikri Mishnah Torah, Bagdam Mosel Sefer Mishnah Torah, Kaisav Rambam, as the reason why you had to write the Mishnah Torah. L'chora, you have the Gemara, you have Talmud Bavli, you want to know the halachas, you're looking in Talmud Bavli. You have Mishnayos, you have the Gemara, what else do you need? So he says, B'zman hazeh takfu atzaros yisedes v'dach ka'ashas ha'koil v'av da chachmas hachameinu chulum lefichach oisam hapirushim v'halachas v'atshuvas shechibru ha'goynim chulum niskashu b'yameinu v'ein mevin enem karoi elam ma'at b'mispar. So therefore, since it's impossible for your average person to go ahead and know the halachas that all the Geonim wrote and the Tshuvas and also the Pshat and the Gemara, so, if we look at Torah as Seichel, so what did the Rambam do? He dumbed it down. He made it, the bottom line. Talmud for dummies. He made it in such a way that it's like he cheapened it, he lessened it. He decreased the Gishmak in learning. The
question was Piruk mean?
Piruk is also answering a question. Kasha is a question, Piruk is an answer. You're missing that Gishmak in learning. Aval be'emes yesh no ma'ila b'limud sefer Mishnah Torah da Rambam l'ga b'limud ha-Gemara Bavos v'Yerushalmis. It's not just plan B. Plan B, if you don't know, if you can't figure out the halachas from the Gemara, so plan B is, you look in the Rambam. No, that's not what the Rambam is. Aval be'emes yesh no ki dafkai de'ezeh shebesefer Mishnah Torah hishmit ha-Rambam Kol hashakla v'tari v'chulu u'mevi rak hamaskona ha'halachis, which he said earlier, the lashon, he emphasized the word hamizbararim, the things that become clear. What is the final halacha? Boyim u'magim l'madrega nailis yoser b'toyra u'kimevur b'kam makaymes shakla v'tari yoser b'toyra yichmas shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All the argument, the back and forth, the discussion, that's from the level of Chachma. Masha enkin halachas heim ritzoyne shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu rotzen shal hamaylam mechachma. The Alter Rebbe speaks about it, that it's halachas is called, brings the Maimer Chazal, it's called kisra shal Torah, called the crown of the Torah. Why is it called the crown? Because it comes from the level of Keser Elyon, rotzen Elyon, that's higher than the level of Chachma. And it's brought down that Machloikis comes from Divrei Elokim Chaim. That's only the level of Elokim. Eilu ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chaim. That's where the Machloikis comes from. It's already midas atzimtzum. V'havayi imay, says the Chazal, halacha kamoisay. Halacha comes from the level of Shem Havaya, which is higher than Shem Elokim. That's the level of Keser. That's the Ratzna Elyon. So Dafke in the halachas of the Rambam, Dafke in the halachas of the Torah, is when we reach that etzem of the Torah. Just like Dafke in the time of Geulah, we reach the etzem of the Yid that's expressed in the Shem. V'zoya Shaycha Shal Rambam l'seif Sefer Yikri Mishnah Torah l'Parshas Shemos. Nisbar le'el ben Geulah Shem. So seemingly a name is insignificant, like we were saying before. What's halachas in comparison to the seichel of Torah? Mikal Makim, specifically the name, Areu Kashala Etzem. Al derech zeu gam benegel the Mishnah Torah da Rambam shedavka idei zeh shehetik besifrei rak halachas harei idei limud hasefer loichim ha'etzem the Torah k'may shishmoisav shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu va'ad lebchinas shmoy hagadol. So the Rebbe also brings down a very geschmack in. We know that the Rambam wrote all of his Sfarim except for Mishnah Torah in Arabic. He wrote the Moreh Nevuchim, he wrote the Pirush Mishnayos, there's different igros from the Rambam, but Mishnah Torah, he wrote it in Lashon Kodesh, and he says over here that he didn't, in the footnote, that it wasn't just that he wrote it in Lashon Kodesh. And there's a lot of diyukim because of the way he wrote in Lashon Kodesh, and we're medayik a lot in the Lashon of the Rambam, so much more than the other Sfarim, because he wrote it in Lashon Kodesh. Still, he didn't even want to let it be translated into Arabic. I guess somebody suggested, you wrote the other Sfarim in Arabic. Taki, you wrote your Mishnah Torah in Lashon Kodesh. Lo hiskim, it says over here. Lo hiskim letargum b'lashon Arabic. So it's very interesting. It's two extremes. All the other Sfarim that Rambam wrote, l'chatchila in Arabic. It came to the Mishnah Torah, to the halachas. Not only didn't he write it in Arabic, he didn't want it to be translated into Arabic. He wanted dafka Lashon Kodesh. So the Rebbe says that it's bedugma from Torah. It's bedugma of Torah Shebeksav. Torah Shebeksav, there's the etzem kedusha in the words itself. Just like no one would think about writing a Sefer Torah in any other language than Lashon Kodesh, and the Oisius and the letters of the Sefer Torah and the words of the Sefer Torah. In a similar vein that I put it together, the Rambam did not want that this halachas of the Torah, the etzem of Torah, which is to be found in halachas, should be written in any other language which is not holy. Yesh loymar shezel gam hatam hapnimi shesefer Mishnah Torah Rambam hu ba'ofen. The Rambam says shekol hadinin gluyin lekatan ulegadol chol. The loy kapirushim v'halachas v'atshuvas shechibru hagainim shein mevin in yanem karoi alamat b'mispar u'mekolshkin hagemara atzma b'avos v'yerushalmis chulu shem trichim das rechava. Why did the Rambam write something that's shava lekatan ulegadol? Because again, we're dealing with the etzem. You're dealing with the etzem, there's no distinction. Ki mekivin shebesefer Mishnah Torah yeshne begilui ha'etzem shel ha'Torah hari ze shayach chol echad ve'echad misrael lekatan ulegadol ki ha'etzem the Torah kasher la'etzem ha'neshama sheyeshne b'chol echad ve'echad misrael. Shayachas nesefes da sefer Mishnah Torah Rambam leParshas Shemos noisav al zeh shayde hakriya b'Shem ma'orim es etzem ha'nefesh Shalachein payelos akriya gamba matzav shalis alphas rachman l'tzlan, like we said before, calling somebody by the name wakes him up. She'oz yeshnei rak etzma nefesh beli ha'hispashtus. The actual calling of the name is talking to the etzma nefesh, but that's not where it's supposed to stay at. Yesh oid inyim bezeh shayisoyres etzma nefesh shenimshach haydei akriya b'Shem. He ba'ofen kazeh sha'achayis hanimshach me'etzem ha'nefesh poyel gam al ha'koiches ha'protim seichel u'midas kenir v'muches shekim shemis'oider shavim elav gam ha'koiches ha'protim. So it's not the etzem separated from the koiches. The etzem, the way it influences the koiches as well. Val derech zo gam b'negela sefer Mishnah Torah Rambam. Ben nice of Lazashai de Limud, Loichim Etzma Torah Shalom Mailam, Sechel Vasog Canal. Yesh belimud Rambam oid milo. Shesoif soif harei moisef gam ba'avon v'asogah. It's halachas. You would think if you want to find out the depth of a halacha, you go to the Gemara, you go to the Geonim, you go to the Tshuvas. But as we know, how many Sfarim there is on the Rambam and how many things we learn out from the Lashon of the Rambam. כפי שרואים בפועל שכשלוים דמסוגis בש"ס, מוקר הרמב"ם, לאחרי הלימוד ברמב"ם, נטויסף בלימוד הסוגis, עמקס יסיירה. From the Rambam, you could now see new insights into the Gemara and into the Geonim and into the other Sfarim. So now the Rebbe is going to bring a similar thing that we find by the Alter Rebbe. Hey, vi lechibur sefer Mishnah Torah makabetz kol halachos Torah shebehem nira begilui ha'etzem the nigla Torah kanal barucham al derech ze hayagam b'doros shel ha'achri ze kishne toisev b'chosh chagolus. It came, the golus was even lower than the times of the Rambam. V'yotzarich la'oyer nailo yoyser sheyuchel la'oyer gam chosh kazeh nizgal madrege yoyser nailus b'Torah hachelik desosim daraisa. Shal Yodim Mischaber Sosim the Yisrael Sosim the Kutchabrichu, as we know that through Galia the Torah, through Nigla the Torah, so the Geulah part of our nefesh becomes connected with the Eibishter. The Pnimius HaTorah, the Nishmasa Daraisa connects the Pnimius of our nefesh with the Eibishter. Again, the Etzem, like we were saying about before. Okay, do a mashal ma'admur azakim in agel gili achsidus me ben amelch shechala v'lo yelu kol hatrufis sheza oider des amelch lakachsa even ayikara shebekeser amelch sheba toli kol hayoker shebekeser, the most precious stone, the most, what makes the crown look like a crown. V'litchanoisei la'arva v'yomayim al asafik ulai tikanis tipa achas l'piv sheben amelch v'aydezi yisrapein. The gilu is that the sosim deraisa ba bad gosh yisera ide admur azakim b'toretz chassidus Chabad shegila rozin deraisa va'ad la rozin the rozin, which means the even toiva shebekeser hamelech. That in that is totally the whole beauty of the keser hamelech. The Yisparnus and Ba'avon v'asogin Tikkun Zohar, it says that before Mashiach's times the Pnimius HaTorah is going to be in a way of Yisparnus minei Hai chibur delach Yisparnus. Parnasa means something that's internalized. What does that mean in learning? In learning is something that we understand. We don't just say words by rote. If we understand it, that's called parnasa in learning. And that's important to actually make and help the Nefesh Habahamis understand Pnimius HaTorah. It didn't stop being the Even Toiv that's Bekeser HaMelech. It's still Rozen Deraisa. It's still that essence of the Torah. The Rebbe speaks about it in other places, Barichas, how that is, that even though it's coming down to Chabad, it's coming down to Seichel, but really it's in Yonim that's totally higher than Seichel, that's Mislabish and Seichel. And the famous Kuntus in Yonash Torah Chassidus, the Rebbe brings out that in Pnimius HaTorah, even when we're learning the Seichel, you can feel and you could see that we're talking about in Yonim Elokim. In Nigla the Torah, a person could get very much wrapped up in Shoshana Ksapara and Dal Rishus L'Shabbos and forget on the Nois Na Torah. Forget and not realize the Getlachkeit, the Lakus that's in the Torah. In Pnimius HaTorah, even in the Chabad, we recognize that's the Rozen Deraisa. Val Pizi Yesh Levayra Shaychus that Morazok Baal Helu the Chav Dal Tevis Parshas Shemos Ki Gam Hagili the Chassidus Chabad Ubedugmas Kriya B'Shem Aidei Kriya B'Shem Nifol Beis Inyan Shenimshach Etzem HaNefesh, but also like we said before V'amshacha Zu Ba B'Koiches Pratim Seichel V'Chulu Ukemay Kein Menegel Chassidus Chabad Sheyesh with a Beis HaMailas Sosim Daraisa Hamekasher Sosim the Yisrael Im Sosim the Kutchabrichu. In other words, the Etzem, just like a name brings out the Etzem, but that's not the only thing. Now it's going to be in this Gala also the Koiches Pnimim. Ubiyachad im Zeh Harei Zabav and Nimshach Gam B'Koiches HaGiluyim the Yehudi Va'ad Shezeh Poyel Loidak Al Nefesh Alakis Al Gam Al Nefesh Habahamis Kanal Yesh Lahoisif HaBeshayches Hanal Ben Aram Lad Morazokim Me'inyan b'hem niris shayches v'tzad ha'shava bein Sefer HaTanya, Sifrei Ikri u'Primis HaTorah shel Admor HaZaken im Sefer Mishnah Torah, Sifrei Ikri shel Rambam sheshneim likut. I said before that in other places the Rebbe says that just like the Rambam is a Sefer Halachos, the Alter Rebbe wrote a Shulchan Aruch, and the Rambam wrote Moir Nevuchim, the Alter Rebbe wrote also things for people that had trouble in Avodas Hashem. He wrote the Tanya. Here, but the Rebbe is connecting Tanya with the Mishnah Torah Rambam. And the common thing between them is they're both called a likut. Sefer Tanya, it's interesting, in 770, when the Likutei Sichos first came out every single week, when the actual individual pamphlets came out for the first time, we used to call them the Likud. The Likud of the week, you know. Then afterwards, we put them together in a sefer, they became Likutei Sichos. But each pamphlet, as they came out, that Friday night, you went to 770, you picked up the new Sicha, that was called the Likud. Anyway, Sefer Tanya, Nikra Likutei Amorim. Why? Like the Alter Rebbe writes in the cover page, the Gam Sefer Torah is the Sefer Mishnah Torah, Mekabetz. What does the word Mekabetz means? Ma'asif Melakid L'Torah Shabal Peh Kula. V'af al pi, Shalikut v'kibbutz, Huminyon Mishukvar Nimtzoyim. Seemingly, when you're dealing with a collection, seemingly there's no chiddush. It's only a collection. The Rambam, the Alter Rebbe himself, when he writes, he has Hakdamas Hamalakit, he says. The Hakdam of the compiler, the collector's introduction. Doesn't even call himself a Mechaber. No, you could think, okay, somebody put together a whole bunch of things together. What's already the big deal? Before this said here, that said there, now you put it together. What was the Rambam Rei Mechadish? What was the Alter Rebbe Rei Mechadish? So we say no. Dafke, by how they compiled it and what they choose to include and what they choose not to include makes a whole different sefer. It's a whole different way of looking at things. Avol movem bepashtus shaydeze sharambam kibitz kol halachos hatoram fuzorim koim shoynim v'sidram beseder mesuder ba'oifen sheteheis Torah shel peh kulos dura b'fi hakoil aydeze gufa. In other words, and the Rebbe says in the footnote, this is in addition to the fact that what the Rambam chose to put in and what the Rambam chose to leave out also is a limud. But the fact that he arranged it, in other places the Rebbe always emphasizes that many mefarshim, we learn out many chidushim in the Rambam from where he put a certain halacha. In Gemara and other places, they're all over the place. But if the Rambam put a certain halacha here, and he could have put it over there, we've had this before. We learned sichos about it, where the Rebbe explains the connection and what we learn out from the fact that the Rambam puts this halacha next to here, and not next to a different halacha that we might think is more shayach. And the same thing the Rebbe says in Likutei Amorim also, that the Alter Rebbe chose there was definitely much more things from Mipisfarim Pisayfrim that he could have had, and still no, he chose these. Noisefal v'gam ze'ikir shu loy hichnes kama v'kama moria zal mekabas l'torish v'alpeh v'arei chidush ikri, what he chose to include and what he didn't choose. Val derech ze minagel l'sefer l'kutei amorim my days shal admor hazakin liket ha'amorim shoyim Pisfarim Pisayfrim v'sidram b'seider mesuder. The amazing thing about Likutei Amorim is there are a lot of other Sfarim from the Rabbeim. Most of the other Sfarim of the Rabbeim are not written like a Sefer. In other words, it's collections of Mamorim, there are Sheikhim of Mamorim, but really, they're really all standalone things. So you have Torah, let's say, Likutei Torah, even though the Rebbe speaks about it in the Oris as well. They are separate mamorim on every parsha. There's no hemshech einyan. Tanya is a hemshech. It's a whole sefer. First of all, every section of Tanya is a whole sefer. But the Rebbe often connects all the 5 different sections of Tanya. Look at the Amorim, and Shayich Mamun, and the Geras HaTshuva, and the Geras HaKodesh, and Kutus Achron. It's all building up on each other. So there's a certain Seder over here, just like we said by the Rambam, that there's a certain Seder Mesudar over here. That the Alter Rebbe based one thing and went from one thing to another to another. And they should be Yasimu, L'chol Bnei Yisrael, by from the Karev, Ma'oid, V'fichol, V'avchol HaSoisai. Aidei Gufa. Dafke, the fact that the Alter Rebbe compiled it in this order made it that it should be close to Inyan Avayis Hashem b'fichol v'avchol hasoisai. Noisef chidush ba'amorim v'shoyel lifnei kein. So now it's a totally different way than if I find, this word of the Alter Rebbe that he says in this Pedic, I found it in the Baal Shem Tov already. But because of the way the Alter Rebbe arranged it and put it in connection with something that comes before it, something that comes after it, it has a whole new meaning. It has a whole new insight. He didn't take everything from the Sfarim and everything from the Seifrim and bring them in. So from what the Alter Rebbe chose to include and what the Alter Rebbe chose not to include, we learn a lot from that as well. The Rebbe even says that's why it's so important to also see the Madura Kama and the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe pushed to reprint the Madura Kama of Tanya, because he said by taking the Madura Kama and comparing it to the Madura Basra, and you see different changes, you could learn out different things from it. And there was a Fabrengi where the Rebbe actually took 3 differences and he compared them and he learned something out from that. The Rechagav, Perek Lamed Beis in Tanya was not there in Madura Kama, because the whole Perek Lamed Beis is really in a way, parentheses. It's like, if a person makes his nefesh ikar and his guf tafel, so now you'll be able to come to the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. The hemshech in Yonim is not talking about the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. The hemshech is talking about how to deal with Yonim of Avos Hashem. But he inserted it anyway, and he made it the level of Tanya. Anyway, it's a different discussion. So he says, "V'yesh loymar ma'degumois al Geulah ilui v'achidush sheniflai de halikut af al pi she'in Yonim kvar yeshnam koydem." So the Rebbe connects it like with everything with the Geulah. Mashakos Haftarah's Parshas Siyum v'Chayis Maseder. The Rebbe always says that Haftarah, even though it's a Navi and seemingly something separate, but it's also the word Haftarah means conclusion. That means it's like the end of the Kriyas HaTorah. It's the end of our parsha. It's not that the end of our parsha begins the last pasuk before Parshas Be'era. The end of our parsha is in the Haftarah that we read in this week's parsha. And what does it say there? Va'atem to look to la'echad echad b'nei Yisrael. Moving b'pashtas Geulah ili v'achidush she'yasa b'nei Yisrael. They look to b'nei Yisrael. Obviously, there's a big chidush in that, a big uftu. Umezem moving. Shal derech zeh b'negel l'chol likut amiti she'nasa karoi v'chulu. From this is understood this idea of likud. If a likud is very interesting, he says, if it's a likud amiti that's made the way it's supposed to be made, I don't know what he's trying to exclude, which type of likutim are not a likud amiti, but whatever that means, he says if it's a likud amiti, it has the chshivas just like atom to look to le'echad echad. Just like every yid being collected from Golos is very important and very vital and crucial, the same thing, a likud amiti in Torah is very important. Yes, loymar kivin shekol in yonim nimshachim idei Torah. Harei idei limud besfarim shemalakit kol in yonim Torah. Sefer Mishnah Torah shemekabes malakit kol halachos the nigla Torah. But Sefer Lekutei Amorim Tanya malakit kol in yonim ikrim v'soidim pnimius Torah. So we do these 2 things, and the Rebbe says in the Ara 60 that this means it's not just malakit in yonim of knowing about the Eibishter, but also in Yom Avodas Hashem, or not just in Yom Avodas Hashem, but in Yom about knowing of the Eibishter. So by us learning likutim in Torah, mekarvim u'marim eskiyim ayud va'atam teluktu le'echad echad b'nei Yisrael. V'yirotzen shebabdeinu b'Shabbos shemenei mizbarach mimei Hilula the Rambam v'admor hazokin v'alachs kam v'kama. When we come to Yimei Hilula Gufa, now we're ready in the Rambam's Yom Hilula. Yikabel kol echad v'echad achlotas toivus amanas l'kaimu v'poil l'leches b'derech yishara she'heronu midrachav chulu the Rambam v'admor hazokin. And what does it start with? Maschel Malim Toirasim. Yuchad Sefer Halachos Shalahem, which is Sefer Mishnah Torah La Rambam Befraj Bechov Dal Tevis Mesayim Maxer Ravi the Limud Sefer in the year Tavshin Amches Maschil Malim Mechadosh. Hareze is damnus achol echad ve'echad listarfu limud gam v'gam elu shekvar mishtatvim bezeh lahoyse b'chayis chadosh v'ba'omek yoser in learning Rambam. And also Shulchan Aruch Admor Azakin. It's interesting. I think this is the first time in the Sikha where the Rebbe mentions the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. V'gam to add in and to make a kviyas in gam Sefer Admor Azakin Sefer Tanya Torah Oir v'lokutei Torah v'gadol Talmud shemei de Maisa Yisafa b'kim hamitzvos behidur v'gam b'afotz hayadus v'mayons chutza v'chol za'achana kroivel is kiyam ha'yud sheboi Mesayim v'chois maram sifroi molars deas havaya kamayim liyam mechasim v'Geulah mitzvah shlema de Mashiach tzedkeinu b'karav mamon.
Amen.